before we get started, I think it's nice to go over what you'll need for tonight's craft and cocktail. So tonight's craft, we're going to be making handmade polaroids. So what you'll need is paper, you'll need a pen or a pencil. I'm going to be using a pencil. You'll need watercolors or markers. I will be using watercolors, and you'll need scissors. And for tonight's cocktail, we'll be continuing on that Polaroid theme by making a blue Polaroid. So you will need, I said in my email, blue Curacao, vodka, soda water, ice, and a mint leaf for garnish.
Nordic Museum.
Oh.
Okay, I think we might as well get started now. So if you haven't been here before, welcome to Virtual Crafts and Cocktails. My name is Kate Dugdale. I'm the Education and Interpretation Coordinator at the National Nordic Museum. Once again, last reminder, I'd like you to keep your microphone and camera turned off for the duration of tonight's program. I also want to let you know that tonight's program is being recorded, and the recording will be available probably like mid next week. So you'll be hearing from me again with that link to that recording sometime next week. To kick off tonight's program, we have a bit of a special presentation. We're beginning a brief look at one of the museum's current temporary exhibitions, Levon Bell, A History of Unruly Returns. This special look is presented by the curator of the exhibition, the museum's director of collections, exhibitions, and programs, Leslie Anderson.
Hi, I'm Leslie Anderson. I'm the Director of Collections, Exhibitions, and Programs here at the National Nordic Museum in Seattle. Welcome to Crafts and Cocktails. And it's my pleasure to give you a brief tour of a current exhibition that we have, Levon Bell, A History of Unruly Returns. It will be on view until April 11th. I hope that you'll have the opportunity to see it in person. The exhibition focuses on the work of Levon Bell, who's an artist who lives and is inspired by the island of St. Croix. And her work is multimedia. She is a multidisciplinary artist, and she examines the past of the region in which she lives, specifically the material culture of coloniality. And I should give you here some historical background. In the mid-17th century, Denmark established a colonial presence in the Caribbean and participated in the transatlantic slave trade until the 19th century. Though Denmark was the first European country to abolish the transport of enslaved Africans in 1792, a law enforced 11 years later, approximately 120,000 people from present-day Ghana were brought to the Danish West Indies, now the US Virgin Islands, to plant and harvest sugarcane. The emancipation of slaves on the Danish West Indies occurred in 1848, and the plantation economy collapsed thereafter. In 1917, the Danish West Indies were sold to the United States, and it thereafter became the US Virgin Islands. So we're looking here at an image from 1838, an estate on the island of St. Croix, just to kind of situate the artist's work. Levon Bell's work advocates for the memory of this chapter in history. Her work explores the legacy of Danish colonialism in the Caribbean, which is an area of scholarship that needs expanding. And there are some really brilliant scholars who are working in this field. If you'd like more information about this, I very much recommend a panel that the museum hosted in conjunction with this exhibition, which brings together Drs. Lil and Kerber and Dr. Temio Demosu, respectively of Aarhus University and Malmö University, to look at the topic of Nordic colonialism in the Caribbean. Moving to the exhibition itself, here we have a couple of images, one of the finished installation, the other one of it underway by our exhibition team. We see a number of paintings from the artist's Cheney series. The term Cheney refers to ceramic shards that are found in abundance on the beaches and soil of St. Croix. The term itself is a portmanteau for the words China and money. And as the artist Levon Bell explains, quote, there are small fragments of pottery, often blue and white, that surface the soil in the Virgin Islands after a hard rain and glimmer. Coming first as plates, teapots, and cups from Holland, England, Denmark, and North America, as part of the vast transatlantic trade of the last centuries of the second millennia, they become its detritus, broken down into the soil just like the traded bodies. The fragments returned to the open air as offerings. Children would pick up these shards, claim them, and grind them round to mimic coins, unquote. So you can see that among the many forms in which Chaney has taken, contemporary artist examining the patterns here through her paintings, but also as a form of currency. They've also been used as a component in jewelry, which is a controversial practice because this is, of course, the cultural heritage of St. Croix, and there's great archaeological significance to these pieces of Chaney. Here you have an image from the planning stages of the exhibition, and this is to illustrate that the artist, in conversation with the curator, in this case me, we discussed the presentation of her work and how it might evoke the experience of discovery of Chaney in the soil. So the works were displayed at different heights and kind of a staggered effect to create that experience. Across from this special exhibition is the entryway to the museum's permanent or core exhibition. And within the display that's devoted to Denmark are the products of Royal Copenhagen, the country's primary manufacturer of porcelain since the mid-18th century. Levon Bell's paintings engage in conversation with these pieces, prompting us to think critically about Denmark's role in international trade and to ponder the complicated histories of objects. Returning to the paintings themselves, if we examine them, we see that they certainly recall the motifs of Chaney, but the form is different. The form is rectangular. She follows a prescribed shape. So there's a translation from one artistic medium, and that is the ceramic plate or teacup or bowl into the two-dimensional painting in a rectangular, either presented horizontally or vertically, installed in the gallery. The motifs themselves are enlarged. And while they might read in some cases as abstractions, one can detect bucolic scenes, flower motifs, architectural motifs, as well as humans in these spaces. And certain points they look as they might be an incomplete image, of course, referencing how they were discovered, but the artist may complete them. She is drawing from the same palette that you oftentimes see used in Chaney. Indigo and white, sometimes other colors, as the source of inspiration calls for. And really the effect is that the works themselves, the pieces of pottery, look like miniature paintings, which the artist then translates fully into this new medium. You can see here at the image on right, or at right, that there was a reference not only to the European sources of Chaney, European ceramics, but also to Chinese porcelains that were introduced into Europe in the 14th century that became objects of great rarity and also objects of luxury that then inspired European porcelain factories to create similar types of patterns and porcelain that would then be exported. Lavon Bell uses a format that has its origins in late antiquity, but becomes very popular in the early modern period. So you see it in the 16th century, in the 17th century, well into the 19th century, and even in the present day, artists use the format of the pendant. So two works conceived as a pair that are meant to be presented either right next to each other, perhaps with some distance, but they are communicating with each other. It became an ideal format to suggest, let's say, different times of day, as in the work at upper left, or perhaps different moments in a story, departure and return, as in the works at the lower left. It could also suggest the continuity of space beyond the borders of the support on which the painting appears. So in this case, these works were created as a pair, as pendants. They happen to be displayed right next to each other. But there's a suggestion that the forms continue beyond the surface of the painting. Much like we're looking at fragments of a whole, as if we discovered a fragment of Cheney in the soil, and that's only one part of a much greater whole or composition in its origins. So here you have just a brief overview of the exhibition, of the themes in which it delves into, as well as the features of this really important work by a contemporary artist. I do hope that you'll join us again in the galleries to see it in person. And if you're unable to, please do check out the museum's YouTube channel and the related exhibition programming, such as the artist talk or the panel I mentioned earlier, to explore this topic further. Thank you and enjoy the program.
There you have it. The museum is now open to the public, and you can make ticket reservations through our website to see this exhibition. I hope you'll be able to come to the museum to see this beautiful and very interesting exhibition. Thank you, Leslie, for putting together this presentation. Also, like Leslie said, if you're interested in more virtual information about this exhibition, you can find some of our past programs on the museum's YouTube page. The next item on our agenda is making our evening's cocktail. This evening, we'll be making a blue Polaroid, and our cocktail recipe this evening comes from the museum's very own development events coordinator, William Ekstrom. William has recorded a video for us to show us how to make this cocktail, and then after the video, I'll show you all of the ingredients and the recipe in case you'd like to follow along this evening.
Hi there, William Ekstrom from the National Nordic Museum, and you caught me outside at snowy Green Lake where I'm doing some photography. But let's head indoors because in tonight's Craft and Cocktails, I'm gonna teach you how to make a cocktail called a Blue Polaroid. So let's head inside. All right, let's get started by showing you what ingredients you're gonna need to make your Blue Polaroid. For starters, you're gonna need a glass full of ice. This cocktail is mixed right in the glass for an instant result, followed by vodka of your choice, the secret ingredient to this enchanting blue cocktail, which is the blue Curacao, and then finish with some tonic water and garnish with a fresh sprig of mint. Okay, let's show you how to make this cocktail. We'll start by pouring our vodka into our National Nordic Museum monogrammed shot glass. 1 part vodka right into the glass. Then we're gonna follow up with the blue Curacao. Also, one part of this right in. You can see why it's called a blue Polaroid. And then the tonic water of your choice. You can go as heavy or as light as you want with the mint in this drink. I'm just gonna go ahead right in. Give it a stir. And we're ready to taste. Thank you for joining us for tonight's craft and cocktails. Enjoy your craft. This drink pairs perfectly with a handmade Polaroid in blue. And cheers. Light, refreshing, slightly bittersweet, but the taste of the mint really makes this drink a perfect, refreshing wintertime treat.
How lovely. So here is the ingredient list and the recipe, or I'll read it out loud, and that photo that William talked about at the end. Like he said, it's 1 part blue Curacao, 1 part vodka, 5 parts soda water or tonic water. I'll be using just seltzer water I have around, a lot of ice, and a mint leaf to garnish. You'll fill the glass with ice cubes and add all of the ingredients and then garnish it with that mint leaf to finish. So I'm going to leave this ingredient list on the screen for a bit in case you'd like to try it out yourself. And then depending on if you'd like, I can play the video one more time. So please let me know in the chat if you'd like to see that cocktail recipe video again. I'm seeing mixed responses in the chat. I might play it again just because I really like how William embraced free loop sleeve while making this cocktail video. Yes, this whole program recording will be on YouTube, so you can rewatch it again, or we can just rewatch it also now in case you'd like to make it live during the program. So question about the YouTube link. I'll be sending that out to you directly over email, probably mid next week once it's ready. Okay, I'm seeing a couple of mixed responses, so I think I will skip the second round of this video, but thank you, William, for putting together this cocktail video for us. It was really enjoyable to watch. So I think what we will do is move right into our craft for tonight. Homemade or handmade, I think I said it both ways in different places, Polaroids with Anna Bronis. So I'm going to stop sharing and invite Anna to come on up. Hi, Anna.
Hi.
Happy to have you here. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
So we're making handmade Polaroids tonight. So talk us through it.
Yeah, I love it. Cool. Well, welcome, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. I've done a few of these crafts and cocktails. I've actually done a few in person pre-COVID, and then we moved them online. And I think what's fun about the virtual is just getting to connect with people outside of the Seattle area. So hopefully there's a few of you from elsewhere tonight. Yeah, we're doing one of my kind of favorite painting watercolor exercises. which is these handmade, homemade, whatever you want to call them, Polaroids. This is something that I saw online somewhere in spring of last year, just kind of looking for some creative inspiration, art ideas. And I just thought it was such a fun concept. And so I've taught it a couple times and I just always get a kick out of doing them. So it's kind of what we're gonna do tonight. I have pulled together some visual inspiration that fits very well with the cocktail video, which was entirely serendipitous, because I pulled together a bunch of Scandinavian winter landscape photos, sort of all with the blue winter theme. I think we have a tendency to think of winter, especially if we're thinking of snow, we tend to think white in terms of color, but I think it's so interesting to kind of take a real serious look at what we see, and blue is often that color that really shines, I think, at this time of year, whether you're looking at snow or whether you're just looking at like that kind of pale slate gray that you get in the winter sky. If you're on the Puget Sound, you get kind of a similar, those like blue tones in the water. So I just kind of love that winter blue. So if you're drinking a blue Polaroid cocktail tonight, it's even more perfect. I am going to walk you through some materials first and just kind of explain the process of making the Polaroid. Then I'm going to show you some photos for inspiration. And then I'm going to come back and kind of demo doing the Polaroid. So know that you can start painting and getting after it at any point in time. Maybe you've already started, that's great. Maybe you want to wait until I kind of shared the photos for inspiration. It's really up to you as to what you want to do. But I've also set up my phone so that I can show a little bit when I paint as well, so that, yeah, you can just kind of get a visual idea of how that's going. So let's just go over materials first. So watercolor paper, or any paper that's obviously a little bit like thicker. So printer paper is just hard because it doesn't kind of hold up. And if you're using watercolors, obviously watercolor paper or mixed media paper, just so it takes that color. Pencil is great. I usually sometimes will use pen in my watercolor work, sometimes I don't. So I have a waterproof pen that I end up using. Got my pencil, a pencil sharpener or eraser is great to have. Scissors, like we mentioned. When I do the demo later, I'll show you kind of two ways of going about it. This is like a really flexible project too, so just know that whatever you have, you're just going to be able to make it work. So I brought a couple of my Polaroids just to show. So these are just a few that I've made. I usually make mine at about 4 by 5 inches. So I get that kind of nice, fun white border at the bottom. And that's just a personal preference. You could make these huge, you could make them tiny, kind of up to you. But these are just sort of inspired by that kind of original Polaroid size. So I do these sort of like imaginary blue islands. I also, last year was kind of doing, especially at the beginning of quarantine and in the spring, was just kind of trying to do some like local, just my backyard. They're just kind of a fun challenge. What I like about doing these Polaroids is it, one, kind of gets you thinking a little bit out of the box. Two, gets you thinking about framing. And so just like how if you've used a Polaroid camera before, or a camera that's like a Polaroid, what's kind of fun with them is they don't have a zoom on them, right? And then you're restricted to the square in the viewfinder. And so you kind of have to like move around and find your spot. And I kind of like that same idea for painting, because you're sort of, you have this like square to work with. Where are you going to put stuff? How are you going to frame it up? So this is kind of something fun that I like about it. Okay, so that's supplies. Like I said, I'm going to go through some photos just to sort of get you inspired. Then I will do a demo, and then I pulled sort of all the photos together on one page too. So later on, if we want to just have that up for inspiration, we can do that. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And also, if you have questions during this, obviously there's so many of you, so we don't do too much having you talk or anything. But if you do have a question, feel free to drop it in the chat, and Kate will keep an eye on things for me.
I sure will.
Yeah, good. Thank you, Kate. Cool. So I just pulled together some, like I said, some very wintry Scandinavian landscape photos. If you're in the Seattle area, like I am, the Puget Sound, we had a lot of snow a couple weekends ago. That was kind of fun because we got something similar to this. But some of the things that I'm thinking of when I'm doing these Polaroids is sort of these like contrasting colors and silhouettes. So what I like here is we have this kind of deeper blue at the top. We've got these silhouettes of the trees, and then we get this like really deep shade down underneath the trees. Same thing here, you get that kind of magical pink color. And so that blue kind of fading into the pink. Plus you have that beautiful birch tree in the foreground. I love this one. So this is a little less blue and probably more into the grayscale, but just some of that texture in the water with the ice that's broken up. And then that kind of the silhouettes of the trees in the background. Had to pull an Aurora Borealis shot. This is in the Lofoten Islands. I love the intensity of that green and blue in the sky. And then I like the color pop in the bottom. This is already a square, so easy to turn into a Polaroid. Another thing that is something to just keep in mind is having a contrast color. So I love this photo because I think this would translate really well. Just that pop of red against that white and grays and blues really just pulls your eye straight into that cabin. P.S. You guys can see this, right? I just got worried that my video was spotlighted. Okay, good.
You're all good.
Okay. Just like to make sure we're not having technical glitches. Okay, so snow is obviously something we associate with winter, but a lot of us don't experience snow during the winter, and there's a lot of just beautiful colors and blues. Just like I was talking about that kind of winter sky earlier. This is a picture from the west coast of Sweden, and I just love the contrast here of these rocks, that kind of yellow brownish color coming into the water. You've also got a little bit of that contrast color up in the right hand corner there with the ladder and the flotation device. Just some more beautiful Nordic winter. You can see some contrast color here too, just a little bit of yellows in that tree line. This was also one, photo is like fairly saturated, I think. So these blues are pretty intense, but I really like the ice in this photo. Just some really nice texture. Obviously some contrast pops with that white railing, which kind of looks yellow in that afternoon sunlight. This is from the Ice Hotel, and I just thought there was a lot of fun blues going on here. This, if I was gonna put the cocktail into a photo, it would be this photo, I think.
That makes sense. I see that.
Yeah. I've been just watching all of my friends in Sweden. They've had a really cold winter this year. And so a lot of like, even like sea water has frozen. And so everybody's been ice skating, like sort of long distance out on these like lakes and even like I said, along the coastline. And so I just love this photo. Also thinking about, as I was talking about contrast color earlier, this one's kind of fun because you've got the silhouettes of the trees, but then you also get the silhouette of the people kind of at that horizon line. So that's just something to think about when you're thinking about what to do. And then this one also from the Lofoten Islands. Just a lot of really deep blues and that like color pop of the light, and then the red little houses. Okay.
Anna, I have a question actually, while we're looking at all these images. So when we looked at your Polaroids that you showed us, you said the paper was like 4x5, correct?
Yep.
So how big was the actual like image, do you think? Like the painted section?
Oh, I'll go over that when I talk, but I leave about, you'll see it when I demo it, but I leave about, I'd say like a 1/4 inch around or a little bit more.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah. So I'm gonna do a little bit of demo. We can come back to this slide if you want. I know some people really like having visual inspiration and other people just are like, Anna, please stop talking so I can just do my thing. But I'm gonna turn on my phone over here. And then Stina, if I can get you to or Kate to spotlight my phone.
Hi there. I'm sorry. I thought it was at 7. I just didn't read the whole email.
That's
So
all
I'm a
right.
little late.
Don't worry. This whole program is being recorded, so you'll actually get the link to seeing the whole recording sometime next week.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
No worries.
I'm bummed though that I missed it.
Let's see. Okay, so what I have set up here is, funnily enough, I actually had this set up from like months ago and I just got lost in like stack of papers. But this is 2 pieces of paper already cut out at 4x5, and I've taped them down with artist tape. Artist tape was not on the supply list tonight just because it's not something that everybody has. But if you are interested in kind of doing more of these Polaroids, using artist tape just allows you to get this like really clean line around the edges. And that's what I've used in this. It's just to get that, yeah, just that really clean edge. The photo that you would have seen in on the website was actually, those are all hand done. And that's kind of what we're going to do tonight. But I just wanted to show you this setup if you get excited about these and then want to do them. So like I mentioned before, I aim to leave about a 1/4 inch around. So I just kind of figure that out. When I'm doing these freehand, I don't really measure with a ruler. I just kind of go for it. So I've already cut these down. Another option that you have is just to start with a piece of watercolor paper and just to kind of like map out where you're going to have your square and then cut at the end. So kind of 2 options. I'm going to just work on these pre-cut ones just because it's easier for me. And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to take my pencil and I'm going to lightly put in a square. Now, you don't have to do this. You can also do this just by eye, but I find it easier to just kind of know where my edge is. And therefore, just a really light pencil line. So you can see I've kind of left, I don't know if you can see with the light, but there's about a 1/4 inch here around that. Maybe I'd say it's like between a 1/4 inch and a 1/2 inch, but just that kind of border. I would also suggest that you do a couple of these. So if you're just working on one piece of watercolor paper, draw yourself a couple of squares because it's helpful to be working on a few at the same time. So you can kind of, as you paint, you can kind of let it dry and move to the next one. So I'm going to do 3 here. And I will, on the 3rd one, I will do that one without a pencil line, just so that you can see it. Okay, so we'll take this 3rd one here. I see that somebody's asking about painter tape. I would say the thing about the artist tape is the best thing that you can do. So I get mine just like from the art store, but I always double check it on my paper before I start. So I will just like test it out on a piece of watercolor paper, just so that you don't risk, having it stick. And also when you're pulling it off, just go very, very slowly. Mm-hmm. Pro tip on water if you're using watercolors, put your cocktail, if you have one, put it on your non-dominant side and put your watercolor water on your dominant side, because then you have much less of a risk of dipping your brush into your cocktail glass. So that's just a solid tip. A solid tip that someone taught me, and I was like, that is the best piece of advice I've ever received. Okay, so with these, so you can really paint, like you can take these in a variety of directions. But one thing, if you want to, since Blue Polaroid was kind of the theme for tonight, I was thinking I would do one of these in all shades of blue. This takes a little bit longer because you need to allow for drying time, which is why I have the 3. I'm going to start on this one where I haven't drawn a pencil line, just to kind of show you what happens. So I'm using watercolor. If you just have like a pen and pencil with you tonight, you can totally do these in black and white. If you have markers, markers, I'm going to just show you my watercolor process. So just know that if you don't have them, you can just let loose with your medium. But I'm gonna just do just a wet wash. So I'm going to, as you can see, this gets just a little bit more difficult because we can't see kind of where the edges are. That being said, I kind of like it when they have like an organic kind of feel on the border. So I'm just gonna come in here and paint. I'm just using clean water, painting a little square. And then I'm gonna come in, I'm gonna grab some indigo because that's like my favorite color. And I'm just gonna add this in. So I'm just doing a wash here that then I'm gonna let dry. And then once it's dry, I'm gonna be able to paint on top of it and kind of build up my layers of color. That's how those Polaroids that you saw earlier that were kind of like those blue islands, that's how all of those are done, is really just starting with one layer of color, adding in, building up. Okay, so you can see that that's what I'm able to get to on the edges just by eyeing it. I could have also gone down a little further, but the thing is if you get into a situation where you're like, ooh, this needs to be square, I mean, you can always cut a little bit more off at the bottom. So just like allow yourself to play and experiment, because there's no perfect here, there's no right or wrong. It's just kind of about what you're doing. So one thing to think about too, in terms of sort of these like winter palettes, I really love, like I talked about, those contrast colors. So something that can work well are the sort of blues with like yellows or oranges. I'm just going to experiment here, and this is kind of what I love about this process. You never really know what it's going to look like. So I'm going to toss in a line, more pigment, line of yellow here. Add in a little red. This is also why I like doing these, because kind of like Polaroids, if you've ever done instant like photography like that, well, instant compared to cameras, it's not very instant anymore, but it used to be very instant. Anyway, I love taking Polaroid pictures because you like take it and then you have to kind of wait for it to appear, which I feel is the same process with these watercolors, is because you're not like, you kind of got to wait for it to dry to see what you're going to end up with. Okay, so I'm going to then add in some blue at the bottom. And I'll add in blue at the top too. It's also really nice to do these washes because once they dry, then you can come in and do those kind of more like silhouettes, like trees or mountains. So you kind of end up with this base that then you can work off of. So I'm just trying to follow my pencil marks here. So just pulling that paint onto the edges. And you can see that even with those pencil marks, these are pretty organic kind of edges. Okay, on this last one, I'm gonna not do wet wash first. I'm just going to go directly into the color, just so you can kind of see, if you haven't played with watercolors too much before, you can kind of see what the difference is. I'm going to take that same indigo again. I'll start at the top, and you can see that it just doesn't spread as much, which is totally fine. It just kind of is like a different effect. I'm just going to do this. I might add some stuff to the middle, so I'll just stop there and then bring in something at the bottom. Like I said, I'm doing these 3 right now to sort of dry and then build on top of, but you can totally just work on one and like add your color and paint as you go. Switch to my brush here.
You know, Anna, if we have time at the end, would you mind demoing how to do this in like pencil?
Oh yeah, I will. You mean like doing a Polaroid with just a pencil?
Yeah, just with a different kind of medium. I do think watercolor is what we're going to be doing mostly, but
yeah, I'm even happy to. You know, I'm happy to grab as these dry. And this has like a ton of water on it. So what's going to happen is like this will dry, you know, by the time that this class is over. That's how it goes when we're teaching. Yeah, let me grab another one.
Thank you.
This is why I pre-cut a bunch of these. Where did I put them is my other question. There they are. Okay, so if you're working in pencil, something to think about, especially if you're working from a photo, something to think about is 1, the textures, and 2, the shading. So let's say that I want to take inspiration from one of those. Let's say the kind of snow horizon line with like the tree silhouette. So maybe I will start by drawing in my horizon line here. And maybe I'll just start by adding some light shading here. I always think too, it's like, just start, right? Put down one mark and then go from there. Because I think sometimes it can be kind of intimidating to just to get going sometimes. And sometimes we just need to like put a pencil mark down or a thing of color. Again, these are small, like if we mess up, we can adapt. We can also, you know, get rid of them. We can cut them up, turn them into something else. Lots of options. Okay, so that's kind of going to be my foreground. Maybe I'll then add in, I'll kind of add in this, like, maybe that looks like trees or mountains. I'm not really sure. So that's going to be a little bit darker. So you're really thinking about kind of like the, thinking about how light certain areas of the thing are and how dark. That's going to kind of help you with the pencils. And then let's see, I've got some clouds. So maybe I'll do some clouds up here. And then now I want to come in and do these sort of like trees. So then maybe I'll come in. I'm going to start adding trees. And again, there's no right or wrong here, right? It's like we're just playing, we're just experimenting. So keep going with that. And then maybe as I do that, now thinking about, oh, maybe I want to like put in some shadows here, right? Because maybe like I'm envisioning the sun is over here. So maybe I kind of get some shadows going. Maybe as I do that, maybe I feel like this snow in the front needs some texture in it. So maybe just adding some more things in. Maybe I want to darken up this background. So yeah, is that helpful for a pencil one?
I think that looks great. I do have a question back to watercolor again.
Yep, I'm gonna switch over.
If it's too wet, could you use some kind of like fabric or paper to blot it to make it less wet?
Yes. So if you're doing a wet wash, like I was doing in the beginning where I just did the water first, you can definitely dab on that with like a paper towel works really well. If you have already put your paint down, just know that dabbing it is going to pull some of that pigment up. Yeah. So here's an example of just for people who maybe aren't so used to watercolor. Some of you might do watercolor all the time, and if so, just keep working. But so this is that first one that I did, right? I got a nice even wash on this. I was pretty diligent about like making sure that I had a good amount of water, and then went kind of across. This is the one where I didn't have that wet wash to begin with. So I kind of started with my pigment up here and down here and then went up. And then because I pulled in my larger brush and kind of brought, because I was trying to kind of smooth it out, you can see that I've gotten this like line here. When this happens, use that to your benefit, right? Like maybe that's the kind of shadow line of some trees that are up here. Or maybe it's like texture in water or clouds up here. So you can always kind of adapt and change as you go, and just kind of make it work. And then here's the other one. I was trying to do that kind of sunsetty thing. So I'll keep going. Let's see, what would people prefer? Would you like to just kind of keep watching me paint, or should I put up those photos so you have some visual inspiration? What do people have a preference for?
Pop it in the chat. I want to hear your preference.
Mm-hmm.
People like to watch you paint. I had a question actually. What's the number of your leaded pencil? Like, what number is it?
A good question. They're Blackwing pencils, so they don't. I think actually the black ones. I think it's like an HB.
Okay.
I have the package
Cool.
here somewhere. Yeah, these ones are pretty soft. Yeah.
I'm seeing kind of mixed responses, but mostly watching you paint. But with that in mind, would we be able to send out those pictures afterwards?
I can do this too. So currently this is spotlighted, but I will screen share on my computer. So if you want to see the visuals, if you go to gallery view, you can then, you should be able to scroll over to see those. That should work, right? Okay.
I think that's a solid solution.
So much technology, you guys.
Perfect.
For those who want to see that, let us know if that is working for you in terms of seeing images.
I will say,
okay,
it will be well split in the recording. So if it's not working out, you can definitely see it in the recording. So I think you're all good.
Cool. Okay, so now that I have, now I've got some, this is almost dry. Then this is the thing about watercolor, right? Like you got to have some patience. A lot of people will work with blow dryers actually, which is particularly helpful if you're working on this kind of painting where you're trying to build it up, because you'll be able to have less patience and make it work. I'm gonna kind of take inspiration from one of these ice photos because I just thought that those were kind of cool. So I've never really done this before, so this is my Bob Ross moment, I guess, right? Where we're just making happy little pieces of ice and islands. But I'm going to envision that my horizon line is kind of here. And then maybe I have kind of some kind of ice here. So I'm just going to kind of start to add in some things that maybe look like ice. I don't know if this looks like ice, but you know what? We're just playing and experimenting. That's what Crafts and Cocktails is for. I like to, in my personal practice, it's harder, but certainly when I teach, I really like to challenge people to let go a little bit because I think we often have a lot of hangups about whether what we're doing is quote unquote good or not. And the fact that you are here tonight, just like taking time to make art, and that's the important part. Because this now is starting to look like blue cobblestones, but you know what? That's fine. They're happy little cobblestones, so that's great. I also think that from these images, we don't have to interpret them literally. Some of these photos are like, you could just take inspiration from the colors and just have like 3 strips of colors within them. Okay, so just adding in here. I might then come up here. Kate, it looks like maybe the double screen thing isn't working so well. I don't know.
I think it requires people to have their own like screen setup happening. So it might actually be better to just kind of pick one and then switch back and forth.
Well, if you've been looking at the visual inspiration, just commit it to memory. Yeah.
Sounds good.
I'm going to stop sharing and we'll just go back to my Bob Ross moment.
And I will send out those visuals after the program. So
cool. Yeah, so I'm just working on this kind of like ice situation here. I might, this is why it's kind of fun to have a few, because you can kind of leave that and like come to something else. So I'm just going to leave that for now. I'm going to go to this one. I'm liking this kind of sunset situation. So I'm going to add in Also remembering that when you're using watercolor, it will dry lighter than when you paint it. So this might look really dark, but it's going to dry a bit lighter than that. Leave those two, let them dry. I'm going to come back to this fun. So this is my one where I had like all that water, right? And I'm just going to sort of use that. I'm actually going to switch. I'm going to go to a gray here just for, why not? I'm going to try to put in a little like tree line here. Yeah. Are there anybody have any other kind of questions? Or you can see that this is really like all about experimentation and just kind of figuring out what works for you.
I don't see any questions at this time, but I like what you're doing.
Okay. These are my happy little Bob Ross trees here, you guys. So that's perfect. And now as I do this, as I'm looking at it, this kind of looks like it's in water. So maybe this is kind of my, this is maybe going to be my sort of shore here. I don't know, just going with it. I'm going to add in, these are my like icy shore, right? Another thing, these are kind of fun to send to friends too, especially if you like paint a place maybe that you've been together with somebody else. Maybe you've got like a fun travel photo. You can kind of paint a spot that you visited together. Kind of a nice, yeah, nice way to stay in touch with people.
That's nice. I like that.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going back to my ice one. I don't know. I did not practice painting ice before coming tonight, you guys. So this is all an experiment. I should also mention, as we're getting close to the end, that we do this every month. It's the third Thursday, right, Kate?
I think it's fourth Thursday.
Oh, fourth Thursday. Okay. And next month, since it's Women's History Month in March, we're going to be doing kind of an abstract inspired crafts and cocktails, taking inspiration from the abstract Swedish artist Hilma af Klint, whose work you may have seen. She had there was a big show of hers at the Guggenheim a couple years ago, which was kind of a big deal because she really wasn't well known to the larger world during her time. And her work is really stunning. And we're just sort of taking inspiration from that and working on kind of like abstract geometric shapes in next time. So that is on, Kate, will you remind me of the date?
It is on March 25th at 6 p.m. Pacific time.
There we go.
Yeah, I think it'll be a really fun program next month as well. So I hope everyone can join us then as well.
Yeah. I'm intrigued by this ice. I mean, this is what's fun when you do this and you just experiment. You just kind of never know what you're going to end up with. Oh, I just got a question that got sent privately, but it might have been met publicly. So somebody's just asking about doing another color wash on top of, like, you've already done a color wash and doing another one on top of it. So I should have prepped another one, but what I often do, I'll grab. So most of these involve kind of several layers of blue. So I start with one big one, right? And then I will come in and add like one more layer of blue once that's dried. And then sometimes even another. So you can totally add color washes on top. You just want to make sure that that first one is dried quite a bit. Eventually, you'll kind of max out on like having your colors pop a lot and that kind of a thing. But you can see here, this moon, this is actually created by, I kind of started in this corner, made a circle, and then drew this out. So this moon is actually that initial blue wash popping through, and then this ends up looking like a little bit darker. So whoever asked that question, hopefully that is useful for you.
Thank you. It's a good question about the future of crafts and cocktails. I will get back to you with more information once I figure out what's going to happen next. But for the foreseeable future, it will be virtual, 100%.
Yeah. Please.
Actually, while we have a moment here, I'd like to talk about a different virtual program very briefly. Earlier in March, starting on March 7th, we'll be having our Nordic Lights Film Festival, which will be virtual this year, and you can watch all of the films at your home. And we've also partnered with the National Film Festival for Talented Youth. So we have an additional shorts program, in addition to our usual shorts program, that includes emerging filmmakers from Denmark, Norway, and Sweden. So I would definitely check that out as well. Someone said in the chat, Anna, that your ice looked very Georgia O'Keeffe, and I like that.
Ooh, that's a big compliment. Wow. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's fun to see how these, if you think about the fact that like we just started with a kind of a similar wash on all of these, how different they end up looking. And this is just with a couple of passes on adding stuff in.
Yeah, it's interesting, especially the two that you did that were like 100% indigo. They look very different. I assume that's because it's like dry versus on a wet wash.
Yeah. Well, because there's a lot of pigment down here. This is also like, if you have kids, this is kind of a fun activity too. You can use this. Actually, a fun thing to do is to cut like a square frame out of cardboard or even like thicker paper, and then you can kind of like walk around the house and frame up something in your house to sort of figure out the square frame of what you're looking at, and then make a Polaroid out of it, like as if you're walking around the house to take pictures. So you definitely can use this to sort of interpret the everyday as well.
I love that.
Yeah.
I feel like mine, I went with a couple different like colors of blue, and I don't know if that was the greatest choice. I should have just stuck with different shades of the same color, but that's okay.
Well, I think what I like about these two is that, especially if you do these a little bit smaller, it's kind of a low investment in terms of like time. And so if you sort of like, you can sort of experiment with it, and then if you don't love it, it's like, okay, I'm just going to move on and do something else. But yeah, I don't know. I just think experimentation is really important in art and playing. We don't make things that we absolutely love the first time around. Sometimes we do, but not always. So it's important to, kind of figure it out. Yeah.
Here, I'll show mine so you can see it.
Oh, I want to see it.
There it is. It's
blue. I love all those blues. No, that's fun. Another thing that you can do, you kind of started to do it, but you can also start to like add in texture, like dots work really well, or little lines. And that can help to sort of add,
oh, I like that.
Kind of another shade to it, but without going like a full thing. Now I'm just making like dotted pieces of ice, so I don't know how that's going to turn out, but no, that's fine. Again, experimentation, right?
Question in the chat, do you use pen ink much? I assume for this project, do you use pen ink?
If I do use ink, I use my Micron pen, which is water, it's archival ink and it's waterproof. I don't do too much with, like some artists use like black ink with a brush, and I don't use that. Mostly because I don't have it. This is what I have. And it works. These are, if you do like to, I always say that a watercolor that feels kind of blah, if you take a black pen to it and kind of start with some outlines, you can kind of bring it to life a little bit more. So I actually will end up using, here I can show you an example. I showed at the beginning, but so like this is one that has like black ink around, just to sort of, almost as if it's like a botanical illustration, but that was added in at the end because I was trying to do it without the pen marks. Or here's like some strawberries I did last summer.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
Ooh, question about doing like the ice in the igloo. I assume like
Oh.
the ice hotel. Do you want to show that quickly?
How I would do that?
I don't know how you would do that. It's a difficult one.
Yeah, I mean, I would probably start with the ice cubes that are kind of like in the igloo are a lot darker. So I would probably start with like an outline of the, like do some squares that look like ice blocks and then let that dry and kind of keep adding to them. Kind of
yeah.
thinking about the sort of thinking about the shadows that are always like when two things touch, right? You get something that's a little bit darker. So thinking about that a little bit.
It's a good point.
Hopefully that's helpful.
And again, those images, I'll send them out when I send out the video recording for tonight's program, so you can kind of follow along while seeing the image.
Yeah.
We are at 7 o'clock, so definitely if you have extra questions, put them in the chat now, and we'll say goodnight in a couple of minutes.
Yeah. Thank you so much for everyone for coming. I hope this was fun and inspires you to make more.
I really love this project. Thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah.
Oh, do you have tips for stars in a dark sky?
Yes. We can go back to my face now, I think, since I'm not painting.
Okay.
Stars in a dark sky. Invest in and I don't, oh, here, actually I have one. You can get these like white paint markers, and those work really well for stars because you can put them in after the fact. The other thing that you can do with watercolor is buy masking fluid, and it functions kind of like a glue, but that is easy to peel off. So you can take your brush and then kind of come in and dot that to begin with and then paint on top. And then it's sort of like if you've ever done any batik, like basically because it's covering the paper, your brush just goes over it. And then you can pull it off in the end. Somebody also just recommended salt on wet watercolor. That works too. That's like that you have like less control over, but it makes this like really cool look. And that actually might make for something to look kind of like ice too, could work really well. So that's another great idea. Thanks for pointing that out.
I think last thing, can you flash the tree moon one again so people can see like the one with the moon and the trees?
Oh, mine?
The circle. Yeah.
This one?
Yes, that one. Ah, so nice. Thank you for showing that one again.
Yeah.
Okay, I think this is where we will call it for tonight. And I hope to see you next month on March 25th for our next virtual crafts and cocktails, once again, featuring Anna Bronis. And have a really great rest of your evening.
Thanks so much for coming, you guys. Thanks for hosting Nordic Museum.